sickness that we have here on Earth?
Basically it is. There are a few differences in the types of symptomatology that are experienced, but it's not too unlike seasickness or air sickness.
How debilitating is it for the astronauts then?
It varies. Some crew members may experience minimal symptoms and not be very affected by them. Other crew members may have prolonged bouts of nausea and occasional vomiting, and it may cause them to experience a lethargy, a loss of initiative, and a general malaise that may affect their performance.
Space sickness is in fact the first and most obvious effect of space travel. Most shuttle astronauts suffer from it, especially when they have to move their heads. So equipment like this is being used on the ground to try to reproduce that effect.
I just sit tight here, right?
Peter, we have you running at 20 RPM now in the chair, and we're going to let you attempt a few head movements at this speed and see what you experience. What I would like you to do now with your eyes closed is to first make a gentle head movement to the right and back up to the upright and to the left now. And if you feel up to it, you can try that sequence one more time.
Oh, it's getting very sick-making.
Now, any symptoms you would like to describe for me? Stomach awareness, perhaps?
Yes, I'm pretty aware of my stomach. It's churning over. I feel...
a little bit of cold sweatiness, perhaps?
Cold sweat, yeah. Yes.
And dizziness?
Yes. It's like I've been rolling down a hill and I've stopped rolling.
Now,
and the world's spinning around.
Your decision, but if you feel that you won't experience anything too unusual, you can attempt a couple of forward head movements.
Are they worse?
Forward head movement.
All right, here we go. Oh, God, yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
I think that's probably adequate at this speed. Again, we'll let you relax just a moment, and then, again, if you're up to it, try one higher speed.
Okay. I'm really feeling quite sick now. Are we stopping?
Well, it's certainly successful at reproducing the effect of space sickness. But surprisingly, this test doesn't always give an accurate prediction of how you'd really feel in space. To do that, new techniques are being tried.
Well, now that you've had a chance to experience the rotating chair and head movement procedure, we're going to try a different procedure that we call an off-vertical rotation test. We'll go ahead and get the chair rotating, and I'll explain to you precisely what we're going to be doing.
Okay.
The test that you just finished, the rotating chair test with head movements, is one that we did on virtually all of the shuttle astronauts up to the 9th shuttle flight. Beginning with the 11th shuttle flight, we began to do this off-vertical rotation test. The purpose of both of these tests is to establish one's level of susceptibility to motion sickness on Earth, and then determine whether or not there's any correlation between that susceptibility on Earth and space motion sickness. We're going to go ahead now and tilt the chair to a 10-degree position, 10 degrees off vertical. You may feel a rocking to and fro.
That's right,
sensation.
Yes, it feels like I'm being pushed from side to side.
We'll attempt the 20-degree off vertical position now. You should have an even more extreme rocking or moving back and forth sensation. And again, stay aware of any symptoms you're experiencing, and we can terminate the test at your call.
Okay. Well, it's like I'm going around in a cement mixer at the moment. It's being thrown from side to side.
And if you'll give the word, we'll go to 30 degrees off vertical.
Okay, let's try that.
All right. And that's the most extreme position in the test.
Yeah.
We can go back to the upright position now.
Dr. Homing,
Yes.
Do you happen to have a sick bag handy?
I think there's one directly behind you.
Perhaps a predictable result. But there has to be more to it, because in a spacecraft, you're not being constantly thrown about.
In the modern era, we've recognized that there are forms of motion sickness which actually don't involve any true motion at all. One good example of that's cinerama sickness, where people sit in theaters for a while, feel that they're moving along in roller coasters, and after a while begin to feel a bit queasy. One very similar form of motion sickness is spectacle sickness that people experience frequently at a low level, usually, when they've had the prescription of their spectacles changed or when they've had bifocals fitted. That produces a form of motion sickness which is in many ways resembles low-grade space sickness in that it's related to head movements and lasts for several days. We actually use a form of spectacle sickness to train the Spacelab 1 crew. Here's a pair of goggles that we've used for that purpose.
Okay.
Good. So can you see me out of both eyes? Let me
Yes.
get that adjusted.
That's fine.
Good. Now, does everything seem right?
No, not quite.
Is it-
Because if I turn my head to the right, it looks as if I'm turning it to the left.
That's right. That's right.
It's sort of mirror image, isn't it?
Yeah. Good.
Well, I can see.
Congratulations. You see this?
You're giving me the wrong hand.
Not really.
Lost it.
Yeah. That's
Right.
good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Great.
Just to see how you do with coordination, why don't you take this piece of chalk?
Okay. Where is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Over here in the wall. Mm-hmm. Draw me the face of a clock. Draw it so it looks correct to you. Mm-hmm. Maybe put some of the numbers in.
Lost me. Circle. There we go.
The hope is that because the goggles produce a mismatch between what you see and what you feel, they'll simulate some of the confusion of being weightless in space.
Down here, I'll put in. I keep losing it. 6. Now 3's got to be over here. You have to really look the opposite way, don't you?
By concentrating only on what I could see and ignoring the instincts of my hand, this clock looked perfect through the goggles. But I was rapidly becoming disorientated.
Terrific. Why don't you take a walk through the laboratory? This blackboard is actually a door. If you feel around over here, you see there's a doorknob.
Yeah.
Why don't you see if you can open the door and then walk through it? And we'll take a stroll.
It's opening the wrong way. I feel the spring going one way. And where's the hole? Oh, I can see the corridor.
Just move slowly.
Very disturbing.
Collisions won't hurt.
Yeah. Now I've got to turn to the left side. This side. Ah, yes. Now this is a nice straight corridor, which is going to make life easier, isn't it? No, I'm not. No, I'm off course. Doesn't stay on course, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm going wrong with you. No, that's the wrong way. Is this in any way similar feeling to the way astronauts feel?
Well, of course,
in space?
astronauts aren't as dizzy as you're feeling now, but the symptoms which will come on in about 15 minutes will begin to feel like space sickness. Mm-hmm. We always travel in threes. Here's Sherry up here, who'll be the other safety walker.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Where's your
Now
hand?
we go out through this door, just here.
Fine. Doors aren't so easy, are they?
You didn't know with the last one.
I lose track of where the sides are. Whoops. Okay. So just follow you, Sherry.
I think so.
All right.
I'm going to open the door. Try to find your way up.
I can hear the sounds at the outside, but
Now you're walking along the door.
doors are very difficult, aren't they? You can't
Okay.
work out which way to go. Somebody's sitting there, yeah. No, I'm sorry
He
to...
has to find his way around.
I've got a slightly strange world inside here.
There we go.
Right. There was a lady with a black dress on just now. There she is,
There I
yes. Yeah, okay. Where are you gone?
However bizarre it may look, this test could prove to be the most effective way of predicting how bad an astronaut will feel in space. But whatever methods they use, the scientists are still a very long way from understanding the real causes and even the full effects of space sickness. It may not be the most serious medical problem of space, but it's certainly enough to make some astronauts quite incapable.
Yeah, I can see some stacks of bricks, aren't they?
Why don't you just sit down
Okay. Oh,
and close your eyes?
yeah.
Are you feeling any better?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit better. Can I take these off now?
Yes.
I'll tell you one thing. I won't ever see another gadget that makes me sick again.
What on earth is this machine?
Well, this is an old washing machine, an industrial washing machine.
Kidding!
Believe it or not, this machine isn't intended to make you sick. It's being used to explore some of the delusions that come with spaceflight.
I must say that I've got a strange feeling at the moment that I'm lying flat on my back.
Yes?
And being agitated from side to side, if you like, and I'm not spinning.
It doesn't feel like you're rotating at all.
No, I mean, I've got my eyes closed.
Try pushing with your feet. Just push down on the soles of your feet.
Yeah,
Does that do anything? Just hold the pressure.
yeah. Ah. When I press on my head into the fan at the top,
Yes?
I'm now rotating to my left.
So you can change what your body seems to be doing by just changing the pressure.
How does what I'm experiencing now affect your understanding of what happens in space?
If you were in orbital flight and blindfolded, you would be able to influence your body in a similar way, simply by putting pressure on your feet, in which case you'd feel right side up, or if you put pressure on the top of your head, you'd feel as if you were upside down, just as you can in this apparatus by making the same pressure manipulations on your body.
Right, well, I'm feeling fairly stirred up now. Do you think we can stop this thing?
Why don't we bring them down?
Oh. Well, that's weird.
Okay.
Oh. It's, oh, it's worse when you stop, isn't it?
Okay, now just stay still. Well, you did very well. Thank you. Many people aren't able to go as long as you did, Peter.
This test lasted only a few minutes. But spare a thought for the people in this future project. A rotating room, which, when it's finished, will allow volunteers to live in a spinning world for days, even weeks on end. But there's one thing that no machinery can ever reproduce on Earth, and that's weightlessness.
Well, it's impossible in the laboratory, but there are situations in which it can be done, and that's in parabolic flight experiments. And we're about to start on someone in about 2 weeks. Be happy to have you join us.
Really?
Just on one condition.
What's that?
You'd be one of our subjects.
You may want to check for the power.
Affectionately known as the Vomit Comet, this plane is the only way there is to experience weightlessness, or zero-G, short of actually going into space. And for those who don't suffer, it can be the ultimate joyride.
Peter, I've been doing these experiments for 10 years, and I just love the experience here. A lot of people don't have quite as much fun. I hope it goes well for you. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Right, okay. Hey! Oh, that's amazing. Oh, is that lovely? Oh, this is unbelievable.
It's like being on the biggest roller coaster in the world. After blasting your way high into the sky over the Gulf of Mexico, you then plunge into free fall, 40 times in one flight. As the plane falls, so everything inside becomes weightless.
Can I do a somersault?
You can try.
It's not easy, is it?
I can help you.
Terrific.
It's an experience that's literally out of this world. And it's hard to believe that something as effortless and exhilarating as weightlessness is actually the cause of virtually all the medical problems of space. However much fun it is, over a long stay in space, weightlessness can have sinister effects on your heart, your muscles, and even your bones. Effects that researchers are still desperately working to understand.
Okay, Peter, that's enough fun. Let's do some work now. It's okay to do that with the empty one.
Yeah, that's so we don't get to fill it yet.
My job was to take part in an experiment to see how changes in gravity would affect my sense of balance and eye coordination. Unfortunately, the end result of my test was perhaps predictable. But fortunately, there were some who didn't turn a hair.
Oh, the things I have to do for medical science. However, at least I know that my next experiment is a little bit more relaxing.
See what I mean? But in fact, what I'm doing now, just lying around, is a very important part of the current research into space medicine. Tom over here does it for a living. Tom, how long have you been lying around here?
Well, I've been lying around for 4.5 weeks, but I've been on the study for 9.5.
9.5 weeks? How much longer have you got to go?
1.5, 2.
And are you not getting up at all during this time?
5 minutes a day for bowel movement.
I must say, it sounds like a rather easy job, is it?
Well, I thought it was easy at first until I started doing it, and I actually found out it's the hardest job I've ever been on.
What do you normally do then?
I'm a construction worker.
And it's harder than that?
Shall I take that?
Please.
There we are. Now what have we got here? Presumably you can now sit up to have your lunch.
No, I have to stay down.
Dr. Schneider, what are you trying to do to Tom here?
We're trying to find out how we can protect astronauts' bones in space. And to do that, we need to have him not stand up and not have the force of gravity on his skeleton and on his muscles.
So he's not allowed to move at all?
We would like him to move as little as possible and stay as flat as possible. The flatter a person is and the less they move, the more of an effect of losing gravity they have on their bodies. Being practical about it, you have to let people move about, and so that we instruct them that they can move about any way they want as long as they're flat in bed.
Now I can understand that weakening the muscles and indeed allowing them to waste away, but are you also saying that you lose something from the bones?
That's right. A person gets their most bone, have the largest amount of bone at about age 30 to 35. After the age of 30 or 35, bone is lost in normal people here on Earth. And that when you exaggerate this loss by going up into space, by laying in bed or having inactivity, much more bone is lost.
How do you measure the amount of bone loss and muscle wastage in somebody like Tom? Obviously you can't operate on them.
We actually have 3 methods. The first one is we know exactly how much calcium is going into his system because we feed him the standard diet. Then we collect all the excreta and measure the difference between the input and the output. And we can tell whether a person is gaining calcium or losing calcium. The second way is we look at the bones directly with a bone densitometer. The third method that we use is a nuclear magnetic resonance machine where we're really looking at bone marrow and muscle. There are 4 giant magnets that have a current that goes through it. The individual is slid into a sled that is pushed into the magnet area. the current is jolted just slightly so that the magnetic field is jolted just slightly. And computers gather all the data, the numbers that are coming out from the fluxes of the magnetic field.
From this, a picture of both legs is electronically generated, with different colors showing up the various tissues and bones. By looking regularly at each of these cross-sections, changes can be observed in the muscles and in the bones, and the extent of the deterioration accurately measured. Even so, remarkably little is yet known about the corresponding effects in spaceflight. Dr. Schneider does know that Tom's bones will recover, but can he be so sure that the same thing will happen with the astronauts?
We really don't know. The bed rest studies have been relatively short in time, whereas the astronauts in a space station scenario would be up there for quite a length of time. And it may be that they have reached a point of no return, that is for their bones, and that they would not regain the bone.
Tom's voluntary lie-in is gradually weakening his bones and muscles because they're not getting the exercise they were designed for. On Earth, we tend to think of this as exercise, so we forget just how much muscle power is required to keep the body just standing still. In space, almost all movement is effortless, and so it makes it very difficult to get any exercise at all. And that, as we all know, is also bad news for the heart.
The heart is affected in several ways during spaceflight. What we're looking at here is an echocardiograph, a picture of your heart produced by high-frequency sound waves being bounced off the chest wall and the heart structures. We do similar tests to this on the astronaut crews before and after their flights. And as you can see here, we get a nice picture of the heart with the various structures defined. In the middle, we have the left ventricle, which is the main pumping chamber of the heart. It's responsible for taking in blood through the mitral valve you see moving here, and then ejecting it out through the aorta, the large blood vessel which supplies the remainder of the body.
So what sort of changes would you see with an astronaut's heart after having been in zero-G for any length of time?
Well, we found that crews during the shuttle flights, which generally average approximately a week, come back with a loss of approximately 15 to 25% of the contained blood volume within their heart. If you'd like to take a break and relax your hand, I have a tape here of an actual study we did on the astronaut, and we can point out some of those features. As you see here, we get another view similar to the one we had of your heart. You can see the wall thickness, you can see the wall contractions. We found with spaceflight that the volume contained in the heart, or the amount of volume that the heart has to work with as it pumps, is decreased. We found that the motion of the heart muscle is preserved, so the heart's ability to do work appears preserved. The thickness of that muscle, however, is not changed, and with the smaller volume that occurs in the heart, that can only be explained by a loss of actual heart muscle mass. To date, these changes appear reversible in that a 1-week shuttle mission followed by a 2-week recovery period restores most of the function of the heart. If a crew person becomes a professional pilot and flies repeatedly, or flies longer duration missions in a space station type of environment, we're not sure whether effects can be cumulative from short missions or more progressive in longer duration missions.
But in fact, the whole future of spaceflight is already destined to be based on long-term missions. This is the first time that you'll have seen this. It's the prototype model of NASA's space station, due to be launched in 1992. And this is the flight deck, quite different from any conventional cockpit. Instead of all those knobs and levers, there's just a couple of keyboards and a set of touch-sensitive screens that'll control everything from fault-finding to navigation. But what about the astronauts who'll be living inside this station? They'll be up in space for several months at a time. So the need to solve those long-term medical problems becomes ever more urgent. It's estimated that after just 3 months in space, the heart will have become so much less efficient that a further 3 months on Earth will be needed for it to get back to normal. Many of the major muscles will have wasted, and the astronauts' bones will have lost 20% of their volume, and that's comparable to the loss through aging in a 95-year-old. All this much is known, but the details of how it happens, how it could be prevented, and how long-lasting the effects will be are still very little understood.
In theory, very long missions could so weaken an astronaut that he could never be returned to Earth's gravity. And yet, whatever the possible risks, there are still plenty of volunteers ready to take that step into space.
Okay, faults are cleared. Channel 68X is on the TAC in, and it's verified and we're in GPC. Displays are still good. Okay, we've got the engines coming up at T-minus 7 seconds. We do have PC. You ready for this one, Peter?